BYD's profit just crashed 55% in a single quarter, the lowest earnings in over 3 years. A forensic accounting firm in Hong Kong just accused them of burying $44 billion in hidden debt that never shows up on their books. But here is the part that should stop you cold. The chairman of China's biggest car company just stood in front of his own shareholders and admitted out loud that his technology lead is gone. So how did the company that was supposed to crush every American and Japanese automaker on the planet end up choking on its own price war? Let's start with the earnings report that BYD was hoping nobody would read past the headline. Q1 2026, revenue dropped 11.8% to about 150 billion yuan. That is roughly $22 billion. But the profit line is the one that tells the real story. Net income crashed 55.4% year over year to 4.08 billion yuan, about $597 million. That is the lowest quarterly profit BYD has posted since early 2023. And this was not a one-off bad quarter. This was the fourth straight quarter of year-over-year profit declines in a row. Q3 2025 was already ugly, with profit down 32.6%. Q4 got worse, down 38%, and Q1 2026 got slammed with a 2.1 billion yuan foreign exchange loss on top of everything else, with financial expenses surging over 200%. The full year 2025 numbers tell the same story, just stretched across 12 months. Revenue barely grew, up just 3.5% to 804 billion yuan, but profit fell nearly 19% to 32.6 billion yuan. That was BYD's first annual profit decline in 4 years. Auto gross margin slid from 22.3% down to 20.5%. And here is the number that should really hit home. In 2023, BYD's per-vehicle net profit was roughly 9,000 yuan. That is about $1,250 per car. Toyota clears over 8,000 per vehicle. Ford makes more off a single F-150 than BYD makes on 5 cars combined. So even in the best year BYD ever had, they were barely keeping their head above the waterline. And the reason those margins just fell through the floor is a price war that BYD started with its own 2 hands. Late May 2025, BYD drops a bomb on its own industry. Discounts of up to 34% across 22 different models. Their entry-level Seagull hatchback, already one of the cheapest EVs on the planet at around $10,000, got slashed down to roughly $7,700. The stock market reaction was instant. BYD shares fell 8.3%. Over 100 billion yuan in market value, roughly $13.8 billion, vanished in 2 trading days. That is like burning down a mid-sized American corporation in 48 hours just to move some hatchbacks. And it was not just investors who panicked. BYD's own production growth collapsed to 0.2% that same month. Dealer-level inventory ballooned to between 2.5 and 4 months of unsold stock sitting on lots across China. The China Automobile Dealers Association considers 1.5 months the danger line. BYD blew past it by double. And not just their own dealers suffering. The Dealers Association reported that car dealers across China lost a combined 138 billion yuan, roughly $19.5 billion, in just the first 8 months of 2024 alone. Dealers were slashing prices below cost just to move metal off the lot. And BYD was the one setting the pace. In November 2024, BYD's executive vice president, He Zhiqi, sent a letter to every supplier in the chain. Not a request, a demand. Cut your prices 10%. His words were that to ensure BYD's competitive edge, they demand the whole supply chain join hands and cut costs continuously. That is a nice way of saying take the hit or lose the contract. Call me crazy, but when you slash your own prices by 1/3 and your suppliers' margins by 10% and your dealers are bleeding cash just to register a sale, that is not a growth strategy. That is a company paying everyone else in the chain to make its numbers look good on a quarterly report. But the price war, as ugly as it looks, is not even the dirtiest part of this story. Because what a forensic accounting firm just uncovered about BYD's actual books makes the discounts look like a rounding error. January 2025. A forensic accounting firm called GMT Research, based in Hong Kong, publishes a report that should have set off alarms at every financial institution on the planet. GMT estimated that BYD's true net debt sits at roughly 323 billion yuan. That is $44.1 billion. BYD's own published number at the time was 27.7 billion yuan. So the gap between what BYD says it owes and what GMT says it actually owes is somewhere around $40 billion. That is not a bookkeeping mistake. That is a second company hiding inside the first one. The way it works is this. BYD does not pay most of its suppliers in cash. It pays them in promissory notes through a platform it built called D-Link, basically a fancy IOU. And the average time BYD takes to actually pay those IOUs is 275 days, 9 months. The rest of the global auto industry pays in 45 to 60 days. By May 2023, BYD had roughly 400 billion yuan worth of those notes floating around the Chinese financial system. That is $54.6 billion in IOUs. GMT analyst Nigel Stevenson told Bloomberg that it is clearly a form of financing, or hidden debt, and that BYD is using sleight of hand to present these liabilities as part of working capital. He called the company addicted to supply chain financing. Now you might be thinking, one firm publishes one report, who cares? But GMT Research is not some random blog. These are the same forensic accountants who flagged Evergrande before the entire Chinese property market collapsed. And when Great Wall Motors chairman Wei Jianjun was asked about the state of the Chinese auto industry in May 2025, he told reporters that an Evergrande-like crisis already exists in the auto sector. It just has not erupted yet. He did not name BYD, but BYD fired back with a public statement within days anyway. If that comparison does not bother you, you do not scramble to issue a press release about it. And what BYD is doing overseas is even harder to stomach. Because what happened at their factory in Brazil is not a financial scandal, it is a human one. December 23, 2024, the day before Christmas Eve. Brazilian labor prosecutors raided a construction site at BYD's new factory in Camaçari, in the state of Bahia. What they found was not a permit violation or a paperwork problem. They found 224 Chinese workers living in conditions that federal prosecutors officially classified as analogous to slavery. Passports confiscated by management, wages withheld, workers under armed surveillance, living quarters described by investigators as degrading. These were not board members flying business class in Shenzhen. These were workers who flew halfway around the world to build a car factory for a company worth tens of billions of dollars and had their identification documents taken from them the day they arrived. By January 2025, all affected workers had been paid termination settlements and sent home to China. In May, Brazilian prosecutors filed a civil suit against BYD and its contractors for human trafficking and forced labor. In December 2025, the parties settled for 40 million Brazilian reais, roughly $7.5 million. BYD was the guarantor on the settlement. And then, in April 2026, Brazil's labor ministry added BYD to its official dirty list. That is, the government registry of employers who have subjected workers to conditions similar to slavery. BYD is now banned from certain types of bank loans in Brazil. This is not an allegation sitting in a courtroom. This is a settlement, a government registry, and a permanent stain. I do not care how cheap the car on the sticker is. If the factory building it runs on confiscated passports and armed guards, the price on the window does not come close to telling you what that vehicle actually cost someone. And if you think the problems stop at the factory floor, wait until you hear what is happening on the road. 4 major safety recalls in roughly 12 months, all confirmed by China's own State Administration for Market Regulation. September 2024, 96,714 Dolphin and Yuan Plus EVs recalled because a component in the steering system could short-circuit and catch fire while the car was just sitting parked. January 2025, 6,843 Fangcheng Bao plug-in hybrids. Same basic problem, fire risk. Then, October 2025, the big one. 115,783 Tang and Yuan Pro EVs pulled off the road for battery sealing defects and circuit board problems that could cause overheating and fire. That was the single largest recall in BYD's entire history. Shares dropped 2.5% the day the news broke. Then, November 2025, another 88,981 Qin Plus hybrids recalled because the battery packs had quality defects so severe the cars literally could not operate in electric mode anymore. Add it up, more than 210,000 vehicles recalled in 2025 alone. These are not squeaky seats or glitchy touchscreens. These are batteries catching fire in parking lots and steering systems shorting out at highway speed. And Chinese consumers have been flooding social media with photos of rust forming on 2-year-old sedans, crash structure beams so thin owners joke they could peel an apple with them, and dashboard panels cracking within months of delivery. When you are cutting prices by a third and demanding your suppliers take a 10% haircut, the quality has to come from somewhere. Now we are seeing exactly where it came from. But even if BYD fixed every single recall and quality complaint tomorrow, it still might not be enough to save them, because the rest of the world just locked the front door. The European Union slapped BYD with a 17% countervailing duty in October 2024, stacked on top of the standard 10% import tariff. That is a 27% wall on every BYD shipped into Europe, locked in for 5 years. Other Chinese brands got hit even harder. SAIC is paying 35.3% plus the 10. The United States never even let BYD through the gate. Biden's 100% Section 301 tariff on Chinese EVs landed in May 2024. Trump kept it and piled on a 25% Section 232 tariff on all imported vehicles in March 2025. The combined wall on a Chinese EV entering America now sits north of 125%. Mexico raised tariffs on Chinese cars to 50%, effective January 1, 2026. Canada is building restrictions of its own, and the unsold cars are piling up in places you would not believe. European ports in Belgium and Germany have been sitting on Chinese EVs with reported dwell times stretching up to 18 months. And in October 2025, a local council in New South Wales, Australia, caught BYD illegally stockpiling more than 1,600 unsold vehicles in a water park parking lot near Wollongong. They had arrived at the port with nowhere else to go. That is the image. 1,600 brand new BYDs rotting in a parking lot next to a wave pool because nobody wanted them. And here is the part that should terrify BYD's own investors. According to their 2025 annual report, the average car BYD sells overseas goes for about $26,900. Domestically in China, the average is around $17,400. Overseas gross margin is 28.1%. Domestic is 17.2%. Analysts at Citigroup estimate that BYD's Chinese operations actually slipped into an outright loss in Q1 2026. So the only thing keeping BYD's total profit line above zero is the overseas export business. And the EU, the US, Mexico, and Canada are all systematically trying to shut that business down. I honestly think this is the part of the BYD story that does not get talked about enough. The home market where they move the most cars is the one where they barely break even. The foreign markets where they actually make real money are the ones building walls to keep them out. That is not a company on the edge of a breakthrough. That is a company running out of road in both directions. And then came the moment that confirmed everything the skeptics had been saying for years. December 5th, 2025. BYD headquarters, Pingshan District, Shenzhen. An extraordinary shareholders meeting. Wang Chuanfu, the man who built BYD from a battery shop in 1995 into the biggest EV maker on the face of the earth, stands in front of his own investors and says something he has never said publicly before. He acknowledges reduced technological leadership compared with previous years. He admits that unresolved user pain points remain, specifically citing poor charging performance in cold weather. Coming from a man whose entire public identity is built on projecting absolute, unshakable confidence, that was the closest thing to a white flag BYD has ever raised. And the numbers behind his admission are devastating. BYD's domestic market share collapsed from 25.4% in December 2025 to 15.8% in January 2026. Retail sales across January and February dropped 55% year-over-year. By April 2026, BYD had posted its 8th consecutive month of year-over-year sales declines in China. 8 months in a row of going backwards in your own home market. And BYD is not falling alone. The entire Chinese EV industry is caving in around it. Hi-Fi went into pre-bankruptcy in August 2024. WM Motor folded in October 2023. Neta, a brand that had actually sold over 500,000 cars, collapsed in 2024. IOUs, Byton, Singulato, all dead. Roughly 400 Chinese EV brands have shut down since 2018. The market is expected to consolidate to 5 or maybe 7 survivors, and the rocket fuel that launched every one of them, government subsidies, is running out. China halved its EV purchase tax exemption from 30,000 yuan per vehicle to 15,000 starting in 2026. That pulled a massive wave of demand forward into late 2025 and left the start of 2026 with a crater. The Kiel Institute for the World Economy calculated that BYD alone received about 3.4 billion euros in direct government subsidies between 2018 and 2022 alone. Subsidies as a share of revenue tripled from 1.1% to 3.5% over that period. And the researchers said their figures clearly understate the true scale. So, when BYD was winning, it was winning with Beijing's checkbook behind every sale. Now, the checks are shrinking, the tariff walls are climbing, and we are finally seeing what BYD looks like without the government holding its hand. And it looks a lot like every other automaker that bet the whole company on battery electrics and hit the same wall. Ford's EV division lost $5.1 billion in 2024 and is projecting another $5 to $5.5 billion in 2025. GM wrote off $1.6 billion after the US tax credit went away. Stellantis posted 22.3 billion euros in net losses in 2025. Every single company that went all in on EVs is swimming in red ink. Meanwhile, Toyota, the company that got laughed at for years for refusing to jump off the EV cliff, is sitting on a 7.1% net margin, selling hybrids that people actually want to buy and that actually make money on every single unit sold. Toyota is the one laughing right now, and BYD is the one scrambling to figure out how to sell a car for $7,700 without the whole thing falling apart at the seams. The lesson here is the same one that keeps showing up in every single one of these stories, and some of you watching this video have been saying it for years before anyone with a microphone would admit it. When your business model depends on government subsidies to make each sale work, on squeezing your suppliers for 9 months before you pay them a dime, on slashing prices until your own dealers lose money just to book the unit, and on dumping cheap cars into foreign markets that are now building walls to keep you out, you have not built a car company. You have built a house of cards with a government credit line, and the wind just picked up. BYD reports Q2 2026 earnings in August, and whatever those numbers say, I will be here with the full breakdown before the spin starts. Subscribe so you do not miss it.